Who?
We don't like the idea of you having a VCR at home and being able to record TV shows and play them back whenever you want and lend tapes to your friends. And there was really a feeling that video recording could destroy Hollywood's entire business model. And so you had this really interesting moment in 1982 where the Motion Picture Association was campaigning in Washington to either knock VCRs off of the market or at least impose a tax every time someone bought a VCR, bought a videotape, that you should put some money into a kitty to help the motion picture studios, because we know whose content you're going to record on that tape. It's not, you know, Little Timmy's First Steps. We know it's going to be White Christmas from the TV broadcast. And so you have this great quote from the late Jack Valenti talking to Congress. And he also made a big deal of the fact that the VCR manufacturers were all Japanese and the movie industry was American, and these Japanese companies were trying to steal our American content. And yet, less than a decade after that statement, the revenues from selling and renting videotapes had surpassed ticket sales. So it's just maybe the perfect example of an industry looking at something initially as this is a terrible threat that's going to kill us. And then suddenly some people start to see, oh, actually it's an opportunity and you can build a business around it.
Stop playing! Please, stop playing.
I don't have the key to that door yet.
The Germans were here. The Germans were all over this area. They left mines everywhere. And pianos were their favorite hiding places.
I see. Sorry. Then maybe you're safe as long as you only play Bach. He's German?
Is something funny?
No, I'm sorry.
I've met you before.
I don't think so.
Look. See? Move that and no more Bach.
So some of you recognize the guy in the turban? Yes? He is Saeed from Lost, who ever since The English Patient came out in 1996, I guess has been typecast as a guy who can defuse bombs, and he's your go-to guy when you have a problem. The reason I like to show this clip is because English Patient won the Oscar for Best Editing in 1996, and it was the first movie to have been edited digitally to win the Best Editing Oscar. And so it kind of represented a tipping point for the way editors worked. For most of the 20th century, they used moviolas and kind of worked physically with film, cutting it apart, splicing it back together. It was a process that they got very, very good at. You know, they and their assistants knew where every foot of film that had been shot was hanging or was filed away, and they would bring it together, and it was a great craft, and they were wonderful at it. And so when you had companies starting to suggest that maybe you could use banks of video recorders or laser discs or computers to make the editing process faster, to say, all right, we'll get that clip in 1 second, we'll try the cut, we'll see how it works, and if we don't like it, we can try another and another and another. And basically being able to try more cuts, work on the sequence, sort of do more work on the sequence in a compressed period of time was the promise of digital editing. You have on the right there is Bill Warner, who was the co-founder of Avid Technology. On the upper right, you have the Edit Droid system that George Lucas developed, and I love the design of it because it looks like something that could have been on the Death Star, And then on the left is Walter Murch, who edited The English Patient and was really an early advocate of using computers and the Avid system in particular for editing movies. And I talked to one of the other early employees of Avid who told me this about trying to introduce computers to editors here in Hollywood. He said they were like concert pianists who were told that instead of playing on a Steinway, they were going to have to perform on a Moog synthesizer. And there was this long battle leading up to The English Patient, even a little bit after it, convincing movie editors, get rid of your moviola, don't keep working on film. This is the wave of the future. And it really took a long time. There were companies that started up, raised millions of dollars, and went bankrupt just because they couldn't get their stuff adopted by editors. And I would point out that the same thing has really been happening over the last 10 years with cinematographers and digital cameras. They've been sort of explaining all of the reasons why it's great to keep shooting on film, why film cameras are so much better, why digital cameras are never going to be good enough. And now actually the turning point that we could see on Sunday is Benjamin Button is the first film shot entirely with a digital camera that's nominated for the Best Cinematography Oscar. I want to show one last clip here.
Evolution of dance.
Okay, so can you raise your hand if you've seen this video before on YouTube? Almost the entire audience. It's always either the number one or number two most popular video on YouTube. When I downloaded it a few weeks ago, it had over 100 million views. And so this is really one of the things that I think we'll talk about in the panel a little bit, but this is what Hollywood is grappling with right now, is that if someone like Judson Lapley can make a video like this, I interviewed him a couple years ago, and he said, I basically just set up my DV camera in the back, pushed record, and went on stage and did my act, and later uploaded it to YouTube and reached this global audience of 100 million people. If you can do that, if it's basically free to make content and free to distribute it around the world, what are the movie studios going to do? Can these two things exist alongside each other? This world of user-generated, semi-professional, professional content production on the internet at really low costs, and $100 million, $150 million movies from Sony and Pixar and Lucasfilm. There's a great quote from Sumner Redstone, who is of course suing YouTube and Google, who says you can't possibly ever pay the rent posting videos on YouTube. And there are people now who are paying the rent posting videos on YouTube. So this is another example of looking at the technology as this is going to kill Viacom and Paramount, and we can't have people posting our content to YouTube. And my sense, and maybe this is some of your sense, is that we'll eventually figure out what the business model is for YouTube. And there are some individuals. There's a guy named Michael Buckley who does a show called What the Buck on YouTube that's kind of like an entertainment commentary, sort of very catty, talk soup-like show. And last year he made 6 figures producing content for YouTube, quit his day job, and got a development deal from HBO. So something interesting is happening here. To wrap up, in the book, I talk about, sort of categorize people in these 3 buckets. And one is the innovators who want to introduce a new technology or new way of working. The second is not film preservationists, but I think of them as people who want to preserve the status quo. They want to keep things the way they are, don't rock the boat, don't disrupt us. So they're trying to preserve the status quo. And then in the middle, you have these people who just don't care one way or the other. They're the sideline sitters. They're just going to wait to see how things play out. Is Blu-ray going to win, or is HD DVD going to win? Let's let other people try to figure out YouTube. We're not going to do anything. And I think that a lot of times you see that innovators don't really spend enough time thinking about all the reasons that people, whether they're cinematographers or editors or animators or studio executives, don't want to change. And it's an endless list. I mean, I'm too busy. I'm working too much. It threatens my existing business models. Your technology, like Warner Brothers and the jazz singer, it's not reliable enough. A lot of it's concern about losing status and authority. When the video tap came along and suddenly everyone could see what the cinematographer was doing, they really lost a lot of control of what happened on a movie set. And then when you talk to people like Steven Spielberg, who still shoots on film and has said, I'm going to be the person in Hollywood buying the last foot of celluloid that is sold, for him it's all about tradition and heritage and the people that taught him filmmaking and the people that he looked up to. And so I'm not saying these aren't valid reasons. I'm just saying that all of this stuff exists, and a lot of times people who are trying to introduce something new don't pay enough attention to all these psychological reasons.